Hello, and welcome to episode 12 of A Pathetic Podcast. I am your solo host for this week, Christian, and it's just me this week. No Pat. He is out of town, unfortunately, right now. So, just going to be me this week. But I do have a little bit of something planned. It's going to be a little bit different than normal, obviously, because I'm just here by myself. So, format change yet again. But, so I actually did a little bit of research for this episode. And yeah, it's going to be strange. It's going to be a lot more organized than what we're normally used to. But we will slam into that here shortly. First things first, like I said, Pat's not here, so it's just me by myself. But make sure to go unfollow him from @ScentedGladbag. We want to make sure, since he's not here and he decided to abandon us this week, we're not going to support his poor choices. We're going to punish him for it. So go unfollow @ScentedGladbag on Twitter.com. And while you're at it, you could follow us @PodPathetic on Twitter.com. Once again, punishing Pat, but don't punish me. I have done nothing wrong to you. So there's that. Welcome for everybody now to the 9090 gang. Once again, not a street gang, but a cowboy gang. Like I said, this week is going to be a little bit different, a little bit weird, because I actually did some research, and it is, so I will say that it is a little bit on the normal side because, as everybody who has listened to the past few episodes knows, our train of thinking is just ridiculous. Pat and mine both. We tend to start thinking about something and then it turns into a completely different thing as time goes on. So this week in particular, the thought process started with, if you remember a couple episodes ago on the E3 episode, I had mentioned to Pat that I needed to resubscribe to Gold on Xbox. I needed to renew my subscription on there. So it started with that, and it ends basically with thinking about multiverses. So it's a wide gap, but I just got super duper interested. So that being said, it like I said, it all started with, I told Pat that episode that I wanted to redo my Xbox subscription because we're going to start streaming here soon, and I just wanted to get used to playing Xbox, because I've been playing PlayStation for a while now, and I let my Xbox subscription run out, my Gold subscription. But I went on and I re-signed up for Gold. And in the process, I also re-signed up for Game Pass, because I had Game Pass previously. And, they were talking about Game Pass so much at E3, I decided that I would go ahead and sign back up for Game Pass again. So I did that, and I downloaded a game that I had heard the name before, but I wasn't super duper familiar with it, and I've got the information over here on my computer, so you will see me looking over here a little bit. But, I had heard the name of the game, but I had never played it before. And I didn't really know what it was about, but I went ahead and downloaded it anyway. It's called Life is Strange. Life is Strange. And it's one of those, like, choose what you do adventure type things. Like, it's similar to, like, what's that one? Detroit Become Human. Where like you have the speech options, and you can choose different speech options, and then there's like interaction things where like you'll press a button when something happens or whatever. It's basically one of those games, but it's got like a little bit of a twist to it, in the sense that the main character has the ability to like reverse time, and when I saw that, I was like, I just went into this like rabbit hole of thought process. Like I didn't even get that far in the game, honestly. I played like maybe the first 4 or 5 different like parts to it, and because it interested me so much, I took it and ran with it. So like I said, I have information over here, I have a few more things to pull up, and I just realized that while I'm recording, so bear with me there. But I do have information on Life Life is Strange itself. So basically, the game was released in 2015 by Square Enix, which you guys know I'm a gigantic Square Enix dork. They're the people that made Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, which I'm a massive, massive, massive Kingdom Hearts dork. So yeah, 2015 by Square Enix. The developer is Dontnod Entertainment, and I'm not familiar with them. Don't know what else they've done. But yeah, so the development began in 2013, and it's an episodic format. Basically, the premise of the game is you play. It's a third-person perspective, and you play this character who, at least as far as I got, she's at this. It's a female main character protagonist. She's at this like school. It's for photography for her. I think it's like an art school. Basically, it's like an arts high school. And she's at this high school, and basically she's the kind of the first like thing is that she's having a dream, and then she wakes up and she's in class, and then after the class is over, you go to the bathroom, and she basically what kind of sets everything off is she witnesses a crime happen. She witnesses some characters basically killing each other, and she puts her hand up. And when she puts her hand up, she goes back to being like waking up back in the classroom from like how you started the game initially. So that's how she like realizes that she could turn back time. And so the rest of the game, as far as I've gotten, which I haven't beaten the game because I went way too far down the rabbit hole for like researching stuff. But yeah, as far as the rest of the game goes, basically you just have interactions, and based off of the interactions that you have, you can either reverse time or you can just stick with what you have. So there's two main mechanics on why you would reverse time. One of them would be if you don't like the choice that you made. For example, one of the choices is you can like snitch on somebody, or you can not snitch on somebody, and those are the two options that you have. So like if you do snitch on somebody and you see the the after effect of it, and you don't like what happens, you don't like what's the response you get is, you can reverse a short amount of time. Basically, you can reverse that one instance of a situation that you had, and you can choose the other option. So that's like the first mechanic of you could just go back and change it if you don't like what the initial response is. Or the other thing is, the other mechanic to it is sometimes when you get a response from somebody, basically you gain information for like if they re-ask the question. So like a lot of it would be like if you don't know the answer to a question, like there's a part where the teacher asks the main character a question about photography, like about art, and initially you don't know the answer to it, but then you go through the process, one of the other students answers it, and then you reverse time, and whenever you reverse time and answer the question again, you know the answer because the other student answered the question. So you can answer the question and make yourself look better. So yeah, it's a really interesting concept. As far as I got, it was done well. I like I said, I hadn't gotten to the end. I just barely scratched the surface on it. But yeah, it was done really well and really interesting. Like, I liked the fact that, well, your choices do dictate what happens in the game. So like, if you choose certain options, the game will basically divert off of its regular course that it was doing, so it'll go based off of the choice that you made. So I do like that aspect of it, and I also like the aspect that you can like make yourself seem however you want yourself to seem, pretty much. Like if you want to be a jerk and you want to be you want your character to be viewed as a jerk, then you can just reverse all of your nice things that you say and become a jerk, or vice versa. If you want to make sure that your character seems nice and you don't want to seem like a jerk, or if you want to make friends with certain characters and make enemies with other characters, it's all neat that you can like go back and like make the right choices to get the right type of story for you. And I think I like that aspect of like, even though it's a linear game in the sense that it has a story that starts and ends, you can still mold the story to how you want to play it and how you want to do it, and you have like this second, you have this second chance to do it. Because I played some where I played what's that one called? Wolf Among Us, where it's like the fairy tale characters, and you can pick your what you do based off of the fairy tale characters and like the interactions with the fairy tale characters. But there's not like the time reversal thing in that one. So I really like the time reversal mechanic that Square Enix put into this one, because like I said, I like the option to go back and change it. I did it almost immediately. Like the thing I was talking about, like there's the part where you can snitch on somebody. Initially, I chose the route where I didn't snitch on the guy, but it turned out that the guy was like a rich snobby kid or whatever. So I decided to go back and snitch on him because, fuck a rich kid. but I went ahead and did that. And like I said, I like how that mechanic worked for me. But like I said, I only got maybe, I don't know. I want to say maybe a good hour into the game, possibly, maybe not even that far. Because the concept of like reversing time and changing your choices, like it just sent me down this weird thought rabbit hole, and like I don't know why, but it just fascinated me to the point where I knew that I was going to talk about it in the podcast, because I don't personally think I would want to go back in time to change things necessarily in my life, but there are times where like I'll say something stupid, and if I could just go back like 3 minutes and not say that stupid thing, that would be super awesome. But like I said, I got interested in the concept of like being able to go back and change your choices, so I put up a Twitter poll, and a few people responded on my Twitter poll, and basically the Twitter poll just said, if you could rewind time, would you? And it was a yes or no option, and then I gave the option if you wanted to respond to give an explanation why or why not. So the majority of people said no, they wouldn't. It was 55% to 45% out of 11 votes. But yeah, so the majority of people said no, and I was watching the poll as it went along, and it seemed like a whole lot of people said no initially, and then the yes kind of caught up a little bit after a while, because at one point it was like 85% no to 15% yes, but that changed a little bit. But like I said, I asked people if they wanted to respond to kind of give me an explanation, and we did get a few, and I will like to read their responses. So the first one, let's see. The first one comes from, well, I'm trying to read the actual feed itself. The first one comes from a friend of the show. His name's Nolan, but he's Bar Rescue Superfan on Twitter, at JNProctor2 on Twitter. He says, as much as I would like to, I'm going to stick with no. I feel no matter what dumb choices I did in the past, it was nice to learn from them and move on. Which I think is kind of like the common consensus of like, that's what most people think, I would say. Like, most people would say, yeah, I made the stupid choices, but at the end of the day, it made me a better person. I feel like most people think that way, and I feel like I think that way too. And then the other response that we got was from Neil on Twitter, at Wow You're Smart. And Neil said, listen, I saw Butterfly Effect, and Ashton Kutcher got all types of fucked up messing with time, so that's a no for me, dog. So once again, yeah, like obviously there's the there's the aspect of, I learned from it and I moved on, and then there's also the aspect of like sometimes if you screw with time, at least in the movies, it'll be to your detriment, which I think is what would probably happen is just things would kind of screw up because it's human nature to just make things worse when you touch them. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I liked hearing the feedback, and I am going to post another poll. The poll will be for the week for after this episode airs, and I'll pin it. I'll make it our pin tweet so you can go on at Popathetic and respond to it if you want to. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that here in a bit. But I did like hearing from you guys and hearing the responses. I didn't get any responses on why yes. So I want to say that I feel like the yeses would be, it's like being able to go back and make things better or change things. I feel like there's a big allure to that. I feel like there's a lot of things in my life that if I could go back and like guarantee that it would be a better situation, like, and just like weird things, like, I mean, some major things, but also just like weird things where like, if I can go back and maybe, who knows, convince people that I've known that got into car wrecks not to go out that night or things like that. I think that's the type of stuff I would go back and change. I don't think it would be like life choices for me. You know what I mean? Like, I think what I did in my past and like how I grew up and everything, I feel like I'm really appreciative of the stuff that went on. So I think I'm with Nolan on the sense that I learned from those things and I've turned out for the better. I'm doing the podcast now. I'm married. I'm happy. I'm in a house and everything's great. So I was able to get to this point from making the mistakes of my past. But like I said, yeah, it really interested me. Like just the concept of I don't know, the concept of being able to like change your past and like, and also the other aspect to it is the going back and changing things and making it completely different, like split off from the choices. So, and this is kind of how far the rabbit hole took me in this situation was, I ended up thinking a lot about like if I were to go into the past, let's say, let's just, hypothetically speaking, I could go back into the past and I could make a active change in a major situation that happened in my life. And once again, I'm not a physicist. I have no understanding of the science behind things, but I mean, even in like, spoilers for Avengers Endgame, and if you haven't seen it, come on, fam. But big time spoilers, so turn it off if you haven't seen it. But even in Avengers Endgame, they have the whole thing where even if you go back and change time in the past, your timeline still exists, and that is just like your new reality, basically. So the other reality still exists, and the new reality that you've made based off of going to the past is a split off reality. So it's a completely different thing. So that really interested me, and I've thought about it, in the past, somewhat. Like, I've thought about like the whole concept of like multiverse, and I like comics, and I like I like superheroes and stuff like that, and they do a lot of that in those where there's like alternate universes and alternate worlds. It's really big in like DC specifically with the whole Flashpoint timeline and everything, or the Flashpoint series rather. Is there's the alternate worlds, and the idea that there is an unlimited number of realities where an unlimited number of options exist. There's realities where we weren't born. There's realities where humans never existed. There's realities where we're famous celebrities. There's realities where we're all homeless. There's all in this multiverse theory. There's all sorts of different universes that exist, and it's all based off of, like there's different points where these things break off. So, like I said, I did research for this episode specifically on that aspect of it. So the time travel stuff I didn't get too much into, because the time travel thing is really confusing to me, because I understand that like going into the future makes sense to me, because basically the idea is that you can go faster than the speed of light, which will basically make your body not age as much as like somebody who would be on Earth. So it's all about like travel, basically. If we're able to make a vehicle that can go faster than the speed of light, we can travel faster than the speed of light to a point elsewhere, in the universe. And then if we were to come back to Earth, Earth would have aged significantly more than we would have, because we've traveled faster than the speed of light. So that aspect makes sense to me. And I don't really understand, like, from what I understand, from what I gather, is like going back in time is the issue, and I don't understand how it would work to go back in time. And I tried to piece it together with like wormholes and like trying to figure out that type of stuff, but it just didn't quite connect with me the same way that the multiverse thing did. I think there's a lot more like physics that go over my head a little bit with time travel as opposed to the multiverse theory, because the multiverse theory makes pretty much decent sense to me. And so the mini world theory, multiverse theory, whatever you want to call it, it was originally introduced by this guy named Hugh Everett, who is a physicist. And I've got some information on Hugh Everett here pulled up, and I just want to read. It says, Hugh Everett, he was born November 11th, 1930, and he passed away July 19th, 1982. He was an American physicist who first proposed the many-worlds interpretation, MWI, of quantum physics, which he termed his relative state formulation. So that's what he named basically the multiverse theory, the many worlds theory that he came up with. It's the many worlds interpretation, MWI, or his relative state formulation. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Like he came up with this basically theory, because he was studying like photons, or his theory came out because of photons. And this is where we start getting into like the physics of things, which it gets a little bit confusing, but I'll try to explain it to the best of my ability. But basically, when you have a photon, right, and basically when a photon comes into existence, it's in a state of flux, in a sense that it either can be a particle or a wave. And that's really the main important thing, is that when it comes into existence, it's in a constant state of it can either be a particle or a wave. But when you're able to see the photon, and I don't quite understand how they were able to be able to see the photon itself, but at the point when you see the photon, it either becomes a particle or a wave at the point of being able to see it. So basically, before you're able to see the photon itself, it's in this flux where it may be a wave, it may be a particle, and then once you actually see it, basically being able to see it is what makes it be a stagnant particle or a stagnant wave. So pretty much what Everett said was that, his theory was that because that exists where the photon can either be a particle or a wave, it's not that whenever we see it, it automatically stagnant becomes that thing. It's that basically time splits at that point, and there's one existence where that photon becomes a wave, and there's another one where that photon becomes a particle. So that's kind of where the theory came from. And if it doesn't make sense, trust me, it doesn't. It's hard to like nail down the physics of it because I'm not a science-minded person at all. Like I am not like I did okay in school. I mean, for what it's worth, but like trying to understand the nitty gritty of the physics is a little sketchy. But yeah, that's the idea behind it, is that this photon, it's either a particle or a wave, and it's basically both at one point, and then we see it, and it becomes one or the other. So, and then it's that splits off, and that's how he basically, the idea is because that happens, that means that there are alternate timelines, an infinite number of universes where these different photons become different things, which in turn make it's basically like the rabbit hole of existence almost, in the sense that because an individual photon, which is it's microscopic to us, is able to do that, it changes everything and it affects everything else. So yeah, I thought it was super interesting, like trying to like nail that down and understand it. Like the research that I did was really cool. I've never heard of Hugh Everett before. I didn't realize that it was him who came up with the with that theory. And from what the brief research that I did not go as deep into this as I should have. But from what I understand, initially, when Everett came up with this MWI, he was more or less kind of, scorned for it. Like he was basically made fun of for coming up with this theory, but now it's like widely believed. So that's another thing that I find interesting, that like I feel like a lot of scientists in their day, they weren't really appreciated, and then later on, once the rest of the world kind of catches up, it's like they can become interested. But yeah, so like I said, I got really interested in the whole concept of the multiverse theory, and I got interested in the idea of infinite universes, many worlds, whatever you want to call it. And I think that going back to Life is Strange and going back to the whole time reversal thing, I think that instead of time reversal and being able to go back in time, I would be significantly more interested in like being able to go to a different universe. I think that's more of what I'd be interested in than actually going back in time, because I feel like I would still want my world to exist. I would want this right here to exist, so I could still go back to this me now here. I would still want to go back to it, but I'd like to see what would happen in a different scenario. Just purely out of interest. Like, what if I didn't decide to slack off in school, or what if I didn't go to college initially, or just other stuff like that. Like I would be interested to see what my life would have turned out if X, Y, and Z hadn't happened. But I'd still like to come back to my own life, because I don't want to stay in that reality. I don't want to exist in somewhere that stuff didn't happen. I just want to see what would happen, pretty much. I hope that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit of a rambling idea, but yeah, that's how I would like to see it, and I would be interested to kind of see what would happen in an alternate world. I mean, even major stuff, like I'm talking about my personal life right now, but I mean, like, even what if Chernobyl never happened, and the Soviet Union didn't collapse in the 90s, which, let's be honest, it was mostly because of Chernobyl, because they had to throw a bunch of resources and money into that. But obviously there are other reasons why the Soviet Union collapsed. I'm just being an ass. But stuff like that. Like, so what if the Soviet Union never collapsed? What if Chernobyl never happened? What if we never dropped the bombs in Japan? What if Pearl Harbor never happened? What if the revolution didn't, the American Revolution didn't happen? What if Caesar didn't take emergency powers whenever he took emergency powers? Would the Roman Empire still be, what it is? Stuff like that. Like, I feel like, I feel like that type of stuff would be super, super duper interesting to see, but I wouldn't want to exist in those worlds. And I think, where I landed the plane on it is because, like, why I landed the plane there, in the sense that I would love to see it but not live in it, is because it kind of connects with me in the sense that, like, people trying to create a utopia, and like a utopia is never going to exist because everybody's idea of utopia is different. So, like, basically what I mean is, like, I wouldn't want to change things because even if I were to able to change something positively for myself, it's probably going to have a negative effect elsewhere. And, that's like the butterfly effect, the butterfly flapping its wings, and, there's a storm on the other end of the earth or whatever. But yeah, I feel like it's just like, not only is it selfish in that sense, but also I feel like life would kind of be pointless if you're able to. I know this is like getting a little bit more on the like existential side of things, but like I feel like the purpose of life and the meaning of life in a weird way is to just live it as it comes to you, and like not worry about like what could be, or like, I mean, you could think about it and be interested by it. I'm not saying don't be intrigued by the what could have been or whatever, but like, I don't know. It's obviously, this is getting into like the super duper personal. Like, I'm trying to like nail down the meaning of life, which who the fuck am I to nail down the meaning of life? It's fucking ridiculous. But yeah, like to me, and what I think makes life worth living to me is the fact that we don't know what's going to happen, and we get to see what happens, and it's all a surprise. Everything, every day, every minute that you have your eyes open, it's a surprise, and you don't know what's going to come. And if you were to go back in time and change something to where you did know what was going to happen, then I feel like it defeats the purpose of living a life. You know what I mean? Like, and that may sound weird, that may sound, stupid or whatever to you. I know there are plenty of people who, think that life is predetermined anyway, which that could be a possibility. I'm not sitting here and saying that I know everything. I just feel like the meaning of life for me, and what makes life meaningful to me, is not knowing what's happening down the line. And like, I'm the type of person that I'm very, very okay with not knowing what's going to happen. And I'm very okay with like minimal understanding of things, because, it makes life seem interesting or worth living to me, because I'm able to see what happens, pretty much. It's like watching a movie, like, like we did the Endgame spoiler earlier, the spoiler alert for Endgame. Nobody wants to be spoiled by a movie like that. Everybody wants to be able to watch the movie and get the experience, from watching the movie as it comes to them. They want to be able to be surprised by the movie. When you go and watch a movie like Endgame, you want to go in with no previous knowledge other than your theories, and then once it happens, then you get to actually experience it. And it's not like it's not like you went in there already knowing what was going to happen, so you're just kind of like going through the motions and looking at the details or whatever. You're actually experiencing it for the first time, and I feel like that is the exciting aspect of not only movies but life. You're being able to actually experience it, and knowing things ahead of time is just, I feel like it's just pointless. But I'm just one guy. I'm just a guy. That's my opinion. Whatever. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it took me down that line of thinking, and then I also had this weird line of thinking that came off of it from, you know, there's this concept that I've heard of, and I wasn't able to quite nail down where it came from, but it's kind of a conspiracy theory, kind of like just a theory in general that, you know, so the concept of reality, right? The like reality that you witness and the reality that we all perceive is based off of our senses to us, right? So like reality to me is what I can see, what I can taste, what I can touch, what I can hear, what I can smell. It's all based off of the senses, right? So in a weird way, reality is really just determined by us. Somebody basically, like I said, I didn't nail down where I heard this from, but reality for each person is different because every person senses things differently, if that makes sense. So like what could be real reality is like, something that we couldn't ever comprehend because we base reality based off of our abilities to sense things with our senses. So like I went into this weird thought process too of like, in a sense, like back to time travel, in a sense, you do time travel because memories are time travel. I mean, I'm sure I've had this happen plenty of times, and I'm sure other people have had it happen to where like you think about something and you remember something that happened in your past, and then you change that memory. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever had that where like they imagine something different happened. But I know that I have. Like I've thought about it in my mind, and like this situation happened this way. I remember the sights, I remember the smells, I remember the taste, I remember the touch. I remember everything. But I change the outcome of what happens in that scenario. So, like, in a sense, if we're basing reality off of our senses and we're basing reality off of that, in a weird way, we are making that new timeline in our mind with just our memory and our imagination. You know what I mean? So, like, there, this is incredibly, like, in left field. Doesn't it's a weird way to think for sure, and I understand that. But yeah, I think that I kind of believe, I guess, in a sense, that we do go back in time in our own lives, and whether or not you would consider that time travel is like whatever, but I feel like that's being able to travel in your own timeline because you can go back to that moment that you remember and you can exist in it. Like, to say that you don't exist in that time, like, because of the memory, because it's just a memory and memory is an abstract, thing. I feel like that's kind of like minimizing the concept of memory. Because I mean, think about it from an animal, like a perspective of the animal kingdom. A goldfish has like a 5 second memory, and it can only remember 5 seconds back. But humans, we could basically remember our whole lives minus a couple of years in the beginning. So I feel like like memory is the type of time travel that would be good with me, because once again, it's like I can see the outcome of it by going back, remembering the memory, and then using my imagination to change it. But I'm still me. I'm still here. I don't have the consequence of it. And who's to say that me having that memory isn't an alternate timeline, an alternate universe? Me creating that in my imagination isn't willing into existence this alternate universe. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm kind of giving a little bit extra power to human beings, but who's to say? I mean, like I said, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not even a philosopher in the sense that I I don't write books or anything like that. I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. I just, it's just the things that I think about. And I think that, it kind of gives me peace of mind with these thoughts, being able to say, like, going back in time is just, using a memory to go back in time is the equivalent of time travel. I feel like that gives me peace of mind, in the sense that if we were ever to figure out how to actually time travel, if humanity was ever able to figure out the reality of like physically going back in time with our bodies, even if that were to happen, I don't think I would be so intimidated by it, because I already have this mindset of like, well, we've always been going back in time because we all have memories, and that's, that is going back in time to me. And even with like the multiverse theory, if we figure out a way to visit alternate universes, once again, me thinking that my memory is just willing an alternate universe into existence, also gives me peace of mind, because if we were able to figure out that we could go into alternate universes, I already have been going into alternate universes. It's not scary. It's not a scary concept to me, because I already can do that. Like, I don't know. Because I feel like that's like one thing that I'll probably touch on with Pat when he comes back, because I feel like he's gonna have a lot to say about it. But like the idea that we don't progress because we fear the progression sometimes. Like, I mean, and you could see it in, like, especially in movies like Black Mirror and Terminator 2 and like all that stuff, right? We have these, like, we create these advances, and the advances in turn, turn on us basically, and make life worse. But I don't think that's the case, and I feel like being able to make the connection of, like, this already exists, but not in the way that we're thinking of. I feel like that's a good way to, like, reach that level of progression and, like, be okay with it, like, even stuff like implants, and like, like if we were to have like artificial, basically like implants in our brains or something like that, like to where we can have, like an AR overlay over our eyes or whatever that may be. Whatever, I feel like, I feel like the taking that thought of, like, well, in reality, even if we do have a chip in the back of our head that makes us see things, we already see things anyway, and we already make stuff up in our head of what we're seeing anyway. Like, your average kid plays pretend, constantly. So, even if we are having imaginary things put up in front of our eyes, we already do that as people. Like, we don't need those things to make it real. It already is real because we have an imagination. So that's what I'm saying, though, is like, I'm not afraid of things like that because it already exists, in a sense, and of course there's like so many things that can go wrong with every type of progression in technology. We can make the next super weapon that will wipe out the world, or we can make these chips and people will hack into our minds, and like, the possibilities are endless. But, once again, I just going back to the concept of time traveling and everything, I am okay with anything happening. I'm okay with whatever comes our way, whatever weird stuff will happen, whether it be positive or negative, because, I feel like most of the things that we're afraid of existing already exist in one format or another, and B, I feel like the only way life is worth living is by not knowing what comes next. So, I don't know. There's a lot of like my personal takes, my philosophies, my my weird insights into this rabbit hole. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, this started with me renewing my Xbox subscription, and the plane landed over here in this weird realm of like this, like, realizing what the meaning of my life is and stuff like that. I mean, I already had these ideas, but you know what I mean. Like, coming to these realizations based off of renewing my Xbox Gold subscription. So I think that's like the takeaway too. Is like one of the big takeaways that I want people to kind of think about moving forward is like that's something, and I mean that fits with the whole theme too, because Life is Strange acts in the same, the mechanics act this same way, where one little thing can turn into something greater. And I think that's another thing that like kind of gives me hope in a weird way, is like one thing can make other things happen. So like in Life is Strange, once again, I didn't get very far, but one choice that you make can make it to the point where your character, dies basically because of that one choice that you thought was stupid at the beginning. And I start thinking about renewing my Xbox Gold subscription and end up getting to a point where I, am reaffirming my life ideals, and that's what I mean is like, one little thing or one thing that seems stupid or meaningless or whatever else can turn into something better. And I think that coming from somebody who like has dealt with like feelings of like worry and like depression and like, not thinking that like things are going to work out and stuff like that. Like I have a real problem with like not really believing that things are going to work out well. I try to remind myself, and I like I said, I want people to take away that, you may do something that you think is stupid at the like you may turn on a camera and start talking into the camera, and then 4 years from now, you're making millions of dollars because you talked into that camera and put it up on YouTube. Or, you may change your major and you may go take a class in college that, you didn't think you were anything of. You were going to school for business, but then you took a botany class and it completely changed your life. And, in 10 years, you're a doctor of plants. You're a plant doctor. You know what I mean? Like, it's small things that can make the big things happen. So, yeah, that's like the takeaway that I want everybody to have. And I hope that that kind of stuff makes sense, and that thought process is something that connects with you guys. But, yeah, so like I said earlier on in the episode, I'm going to do another poll on Twitter, just to follow up. And the poll is going to be, basically the question that I'm going to pose is, we already asked if you could go back in time, would you? So the question I'm going to pose on Twitter now is, if you could visit, if the multiverse existed and you can visit alternate realities, would you want to do that? And then you can reply to that poll and let me know why or why not. So like I said, I'll put that up once this episode goes live, so that'll be Sunday, and I'll do it for the whole week so that we can respond to it on the next episode. We'll read out the responses and we'll shout out your Twitter handles and everything. So if you want your Twitter handle to be on a podcast, holler at us. But yeah, so just, and I want people to genuinely think about that too. Like genuinely think, if there were alternate realities, would you like to have the ability to go visit it? And I'd like to hear some genuine responses. I think that it's an interesting thing to think about, and obviously I went down a complete rabbit hole of thought process with it. So, yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody. I really liked doing the poll this week, and I liked hearing from everybody, and I think that's the type of stuff that I want to do moving forward. I want to hear more from you guys, if you're listening. I want to hear more from the 9090 gang, and see what y'all's thoughts are, because this is obviously me giving my thoughts and Pat giving his thoughts, but I like to hear your thoughts. I think that it's more interesting to hear, a multitude of people's ideals and beliefs and things like that. So, yeah, like I said, it was a weird thought train. It was a weird kind of can of worms that I opened for myself, but I had a really good time, like, thinking about this stuff and coming to these conclusions this week. So I'm very appreciative of Pat not reminding me to renew my gold subscription, and I just ended up reminding myself. So I'm glad I did that. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this week. Just going to keep it real short and simple. It's like I said, it's just me this week, so no reason to drag it out at all. Thank you so much for listening. If you guys want to contact us, reach out to us, you can reach out at Twitter at Podpathetic, or you can reach out to us on Facebook, Apathetic Podcast. If you want to listen to the episodes, if you're a listener, we're on SoundCloud, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music. We're out there. And then if you want to watch the episode, I did film this episode as well. We are doing video now, so you can watch the video versions of the podcast on YouTube. But I think that, like I said, I'm going to keep it short this week. I think that's going to do it for this week. Lots of interesting things to think about. I'd like to hear from everybody out there. I'm going to put the poll up, when I post the episode, and I'm going to leave that poll up for the week. So think about it and get back to me. And if there's anything else that you're interested in that I talked about, just reach out to me. Let me know your thoughts. I'm interested to hear what everybody else has to say. But like I said, follow us, Twitter, Facebook, subscribe to everything, wherever you listen, wherever you watch. If you like, if you want to watch on YouTube, whatever, subscribe to us, and we look forward to hearing from you guys. And we're gonna keep this train chugging along. So I'd like to hear from the folks out there. But thanks so much once again for listening, and we'll see you guys next week. 90-90.